Venice banned new kebab shops and other fast food outlets in an attempt to maintain the city's decorum and traditions. It happened several years ago when the authorities passed a law to limit the opening of these types of restaurants, with only artisanal ice cream shops being exempt from the ban. The city's tourism chief explained that the goal is to preserve Venice's cultural heritage and promote local products. The concern is that fast food establishments could detract from the city's unique identity and harm the environment. Venice is not the only Italian city taking action against fast food. Verona and Florence have also implemented restrictions on new kebab shops and foreign food establishments. In 2012, London restaurants were in an uproar after the ban on rare and medium-rare burgers had been announced by the Westminster City Council. They claimed it was for health reasons, but some were skeptical. One chef even said that if they stuck to these rules, they might as well kiss the burger industry goodbye. Others worry it's just the beginning, and soon we won't be able to enjoy runny eggs or steak tartare either. Raw and undercooked meat can indeed be dangerous, but many believe the authorities are overreacting. However, with previous incidents like the mad cow disease outbreak in mind, it's clear the council is just trying to be cautious. By the way, in New Zealand, you can't order your burger rare either, all because of some pesky bacteria concerns. Pufferfish is a Japanese delicacy that only the bravest dare to try. Their highly poisonous internal organs, for instance, the liver, contains tetrodotoxin, which is extremely toxic. This poison can enter your body in multiple ways: through a cut on your skin, when you inhale it, and, of course, if you eat it. Normally, people can't stay alive if they eat this fish. Yet, Japanese chefs are trained to remove the poisonous parts from a delicacy with a hefty price tag named fugu. It's almost completely banned in the US. There are only a few authorized places that sell it, and in order to do so, they need to have a special license. Just so you know, it's not only pufferfish that has this poison. Most octopi and cuttlefish have it too. Casu marzu, known as rotten cheese in Italian, is unsurprisingly banned in the US. But hey, if you're feeling adventurous and want to give it a try, head to Sardinia, Italy. This cheese is made from sheep's milk and has a little twist. Special flies lay eggs in it. Ugh! Maggots have around 40 days to invade the cheese, and then it's left for 2 to 3 months with maggots in it. The live maggots in the cheese help decompose it, giving it a unique texture and spicy flavor. It may be banned in the US, but it's definitely worth a try if you're ever in Italy. You may think there's everything a person may want in the US, but then, bam! One day you wake up craving some haggis, and it turns out this tender dish is legally banned in the land of liberty. The reason behind it isn't because Americans prefer mac and cheese or burgers, but because some ingredients haggis has aren't considered to be safe in the US, namely sheep lungs. And they make 15% of this dish. In fact, there's a full range of sheep's inner parts, plus some oatmeal, a lot of minced onions, suet, and some broth. It's quite crumbly and coarse, and it's also spicy. If the description didn't make you change your mind, get ready for a transcontinental flight and see you in Edinburgh. Sadly, haggis isn't the only Scottish dish banned somewhere in the world. Black pudding and other similar dishes from around the world are banned in the US due to sanitary reasons. However, if someone tells you that people in Canada went even further and banned iron brew and Marmite, don't believe them. Canadian authorities stated otherwise several years ago. Sorry folks, but there simply ain't enough room in Sweden for both M&M's and Marabou chocolates to coexist peacefully. It's like a Wild West showdown between these colorful candies marked with the letter M. So, who won the trademark battle? Marabou chocolates, of course. They've been holding the fort since the 1950s, while M&M's only rode into town in 2009. In a twist of fate, a Swedish court laid down the law in 2016 and ruled that Mars couldn't sell M&M's with lowercase m letters on the packaging. So if you're craving some peanut M&Ms in Sweden, you'll have to settle for the version with capital M's on the packaging. The World Health Organization recently gave out validation certificates to Denmark, Lithuania, Poland, Saudi Arabia, and Thailand for eliminating trans fats from their foods. Trans fats are bad for our health and pretty easy to get rid of, making it a simple yet important nutrition policy for countries to follow. WHO now has a cool new program where they give out certificates to countries that kick trans fats to the curb. Kind of like how they do for getting rid of diseases like polio and smallpox. Horse meat is banned in many states in the US, first and foremost, for ethical reasons. It's considered cruel to eat horse meat there. However, some people also think there are safety reasons to avoid this type of meat. The thing is, horse meat is not particularly good for health due to various toxins found in it. Americans sure do love their salmon. But do you know that the farm-raised salmon in the US gets its coral color from being fed a carotenoid called synthetic astaxanthin? Yikes! This chemical is actually banned from consumption in some countries, such as Australia and New Zealand. And how about milk we all drink? Unless it's specifically marked, it's treated with artificial hormones to boost milk production. The FDA says there's no difference in the milk, but countries like Canada and the European Union ban it. Who knew? Chicken in the US gets washed in chlorine to reduce the risk of spreading illnesses like salmonella. Sounds good, right? Well, the UK and Europe think differently and banned this practice due to some unsanitary farming concerns. And let's not forget about the pork industry using ractopamine to beef up their livestock. While this is common in the US, over 160 other countries have banned this drug in meat production. Quite the difference in opinion, huh? The next time you're munching on those yummy Swiss rolls, keep in mind that the food dyes yellow 5 and red 40 in them are considered problematic in Europe and have warnings for kids. You got it, they're banned in at least 2 European countries, Austria and Norway. The rest of the countries require a special label on the packaging. Many break-based products in the US, like croissant, French toast sticks, and pre-sliced breakfast use azodicarbonamide as a whitening agent. Europe says no to this chemical, but the FDA still allows it. It's like a foodie drama unfolding before our eyes. When enjoying rainbow-colored candy, consumers are not only experiencing the array of flavors, but they're also consuming food dyes such as yellow 5, yellow 6, and red 40. These dyes have been linked to negative effects, so, yet again, Europe requires special labels on the packaging because those dyes may have an adverse effect on activity and attention in kids. In countries like Norway and Austria, the dye called yellow 5 is completely banned from use. In 1996, the FDA approved Olestra as a fat substitute for use in snacks and chips in order to provide guilt-free snacking options. Despite this approval, Olestra has been associated with side effects such as abdominal cramping and loose stools, as well as inhibiting the absorption of important vitamins and nutrients. As a result, the additive has been banned in Canada and several European countries. Next time you grab snacks to eat in front of your favorite series, make sure to look out for Olestra. Trans fats such as partially hydrogenated soybean and cottonseed oils can even be found in your favorite coffee creamer. Yep, coffee's at risk too. Those have been associated with heart conditions. Even though those fats were officially prohibited in the United States in 2018, they continue to be present in the American food supply. In addition to the US, several other countries have also set a strict limit on trans fats, including Switzerland, Austria, Hungary, Iceland, Norway, and Denmark. Are you ready for a spicy adventure? Let's talk cinnamon. It's a cool spice that most of us sprinkle on our oatmeal, toast, and apple pies. But did you know that some sneaky sellers out there are trying to sell us fake cinnamon? So, how can you spot the imposter? Well, the real deal is called Siouxland cinnamon, while the fake stuff is usually cassia cinnamon. One way to tell is by looking at the cinnamon sticks themselves. Real cinnamon is lighter in color and has a thinner, more delicate bark. The fake stuff, on the other hand, is darker and thicker. But don't worry, you don't have to be a cinnamon connoisseur to enjoy the real deal. Just make sure to read the label and look for Solan cinnamon. Your taste buds will thank you. Is white chocolate real or just an imposter? Well, it's time to settle this sweet debate once and for all. Some people say it's not even chocolate because it doesn't contain cocoa solids. But let's not judge a book by its cover or chocolate by its color, right? Technically, white chocolate is made from cocoa butter, milk, and sugar, which makes it a distant cousin to the darker cocoa solid packed chocolate varieties. But hey, if you ask me, family is family, even if they don't look or taste the same. And don't let anyone tell you white chocolate isn't delicious, because it absolutely is. Its smooth, creamy texture and sweet, buttery flavor make it a delightful treat on its own, or in baked goods like cookies and cakes. So, whether you consider white chocolate to be real chocolate or not, let's just agree that it's a yummy indulgence that we can all enjoy. Are French fries truly French? Hold on to your potatoes because it turns out that the origins of this snack are a bit more complicated than you might think. While it's true that French cuisine has given us some of the world's most delicious dishes, including escargot and coq au vin, the origins of French fries are actually traced back to Belgium. That's right, our crispy little friends were first cooked up in the land of waffles and chocolate. But here's where things get even more interesting. The reason they're called French fries is actually because of the way they're prepared, not because of their country of origin. You see, the term French in this context refers to the technique of slicing the potatoes into long, thin strips known as julienne cut. This technique was popularized in France in the 18th century, which is how the name French fries came to be. Want to add some egg rolls to this order? I mean, sure, they're delicious and all, but what's with all the fuss around this dish? First of all, let's talk about the egg part. Despite their name, egg rolls don't contain any eggs. Instead, the egg part comes from the thin, crepe-like wrapper that's made with eggs. It's like a little egg blanket that keeps all the tasty ingredients snuggled up inside. But what about the filling, you ask? Well, that's where things get interesting. Egg rolls can be filled with just about anything your heart desires. Veggies, meat, seafood, you name it. Some people even like to throw in a little cheese or rice for good measure. Now, here's where it gets a little weird. There's a bit of a debate in the egg roll world about whether they should be fried or baked. I say go for the fried version. There's just something about that crispy golden brown shell that can't be beaten. You might need to sit down for this one. Strawberries aren't berries, but bananas are. Mind blown yet? Here's the deal. A berry is defined as a fleshy fruit produced from a single type of cell. And guess what? Bananas fit the bill perfectly. They might not be as juicy as a watermelon or as tart as a raspberry, but they're berries. We might call them koala bears, but we couldn't be more wrong. Koalas aren't bears. These cute and cuddly critters are marsupials, which means they carry their little ones in a pouch. And while they may look a little bit like teddy bears, they aren't related to them. But hey, we can't blame people for thinking koalas are bears. After all, they do have that fluffy fur and round ears that make them look like they're ready for a hug. But koalas are their own unique species. They have all these amazing features that make them special, like their eucalyptus diet and their ability to sleep for up to 22 hours a day. Seriously, how do they do that? In case you didn't know the history of the Boston cream pie, you're in for a surprise. First off, let's just get one thing straight. Boston cream pie is not a pie. I know, it's in the name, but trust me on this one. It's a delicious cake filled with creamy custard and topped with a luscious chocolate glaze. Now, you might be thinking, why is it called a Boston cream pie then? Well, legend has it that it was invented by a chef at the Parker House Hotel in Boston way back in 1856. The chef, who apparently had a sense of humor, decided to call it a pie just to mess with people. And, well, the name just stuck. But let's not forget about the real star of this dessert, the custard filling. Smooth, creamy, and just the right amount of sweetness. It's what makes this cake stand out. And that chocolate glaze on top, it's like the icing on the cake. Literally. Is a peanut a nut? It sounds like a silly question, but you'd be surprised how many people get confused about this. So let's clear it up once and for all. Peanuts are legumes. That's right, they're in the same family as beans and lentils. But don't worry, we won't hold it against them. After all, they're still delicious and nutritious snacks. But here's where it gets really interesting. Even though peanuts aren't technically nuts, they can still cause nut allergies. That's because they contain similar proteins to tree nuts, like almonds and walnuts. So if you have a nut allergy, you'll want to be careful around peanuts too. Have you ever found yourself using the term tinfoil to refer to aluminum foil? You're not alone. A lot of people use the two interchangeably. But why is that? Years ago, aluminum foil was made of tin. Back in the late 1800s, before aluminum was cheap and abundant, people used tinfoil to wrap up their food and keep it fresh. But when aluminum foil came along, it quickly became the more popular choice because it was cheaper and easier to produce. So how come we still call it tinfoil? Some think it's because aluminum foil was first marketed as tinfoil and the name just stuck with most people. Others think it's because the two materials have similar properties, so people started using the two terms interchangeably. But whatever the reason, one thing is for sure. Tinfoil just sounds cooler than aluminum foil. You might be surprised to know that your trusty Pyrex dishes aren't Pyrex at all. Now, don't get me wrong, the knockoff still gets the job done, but it's just not the same. Be sure to check the label on your glassware before you go around thinking you're buying good stuff. Here's a cheat sheet to help you figure out what kind of container you have in your cupboard. If you see Pyrex with a lowercase p on a dish, that means it's not safe for the oven or microwave. It's most likely made of soda lime glass. Stick to using these containers for food storage. On the other hand, if you see Pyrex in all caps, you're in luck. This cookware is made of a special type of glass and can be heated in the oven or microwave. Just don't pop it under the broiler. Things could get messy. And if you're taking your Pyrex from the fridge to the oven, be sure to let it sit at room temperature for 30 minutes to avoid any glass fractures.
It's the first day of the apocalypse. The internet collapsed, logistics chains broke down. Outside your house, the world is living and breathing chaos. You need to think fast. You gotta make sure your provisions will last until who knows. First off, make sure to stockpile your share of pemmican. It's like a beef jerky with a lot of extra nutritional value. Pemmican is an invention of the indigenous people of North America. They depended on pemmican during harsh winters or when resources were scarce. It lasts long and it's easy to carry, the essence of survival food. It doesn't look the yummiest, but it can last up to 5 years if stored properly. This pemmican stuff is kind of perfect for the apocalypse, since it will give you a highly nutritional meal. A 2.2-ounce bar will give you around 300 calories, but here you get 3 for the serving of 1, dried meat, berries, and even sugar. And you won't have to eat a lot to feel satiated, since it gives your body an array of nutrients, from proteins to carbohydrates. I know you'll miss them, but don't grab those chocolate chip cookies you love. You need an alternative called ship's biscuits, but you can't find them in the supermarket. You gotta bake them yourself. These were literally the cookies that sailors ate during long voyages at sea. A ship's biscuit can go a lifetime without going bad. There are records of biscuits that lasted over 80 years. The deal is that when sailors went to sea, they didn't know exactly when they would set foot on land again. So they needed to be ready food-wise, or else they could, starve. Bakers came up with this simple recipe. These cookies are mostly made out of salt, flour, and a bit of water. But the secret here is that the slow baking method takes all the moisture out of it. The little holes on top help to get the moisture out during the cooking process. A medium-sized person can survive on 8 chips biscuits a day. But there was a downside. These cookies were so dry that one might break their teeth while eating them. And extra attention is advised since there could be bugs hidden in the holes on top. So, before munching on those cookies, make sure to shake the pests out of them. Ever heard of a soup you can carry around? Well, portable soup is an ancient secret that needs to make this list. Portable soup is hard and condensed. It's a type of solidified broth, like a bouillon, made essentially of meat. You need to cook it slowly, with any type of meat high on collagen. While cooking the meat, it will release its taste in the water in the pot. After about 18 to 24 hours of reduction, you'll get a gelatin-like nutritional substance. When this cools down, it turns into a plaque that you can cut down into smaller tablets. To eat it, you just need to find some hot water and put the meat tablet inside of it. It would release all the condensed nutrients in it, giving you a warm, hearty, and highly nutritional meal. If you attempt to risk your life and go outside to buy provisions, don't forget white rice. This variety of rice can maintain its nutrient content and flavor for up to 30 years. White rice is better than other varieties, such as brown rice, because of their natural oils. Now, let's say it's been a year into the apocalypse. You've gotten used to your new lifestyle at this point. You go outside to hunt for some fresh meat, but you run into a bear. But since your nutrition is up to date, you have all the energy you need to escape it, and you can thank kamut for that. This ancient grain contains up to 40% more protein than modern wheat, and it's richer in zinc, magnesium, selenium, and healthy fatty acids. It's not called high-energy grain for a random reason. It's easy to digest and provides more energy than regular wheat. Quick thought here. While we're speaking about survival food, we're not just thinking about things to fill your stomach. We need to think in nutritional terms as well as psychological ones, which means Jell-O. It may sound superficial, but don't underestimate the need for comfort food during the end of the world. Since it's made out of an industrialized powder, it lasts for a pretty long time. Plus, it's a source of collagen. This will help your bones to remain sturdy. Make sure your pantry has salt and sugar. Salt has been used since humans discovered it helps to preserve the shelf life of meat and stuff. That's why Egyptians used it in their mummification processes, so it would slow down the decaying process. Now, sugar can be stored for an indefinite period of time. Make sure to get a top-quality refined sugar, though, and store it somewhere without any type of strong smell, since it absorbs the scents around it. Both sugar and salt keep bacteria and mold from growing. Now keep in mind, moisture is one of your number one enemies in the apocalypse, even worse than zombies perhaps, simply because moisture allows for bacteria and mold to prosper, and these guys end up eating all your food. 2 years into this whole chaos, you figured out your way around food. When it all started, you bought a bunch of fresh veggies and dehydrated them. By dehydrating food, you still get all the nutrients, but they last for much longer. Plus, they reduce in size quite significantly, which makes storing them much easier. You didn't forget about peanut butter, of course. Peanut butter is highly caloric, plus they are your best treat at this point. Now I know what you're thinking, I can go without candies, but how will I survive without milk? Well, you don't have to. Instead of regular milk, make sure you get tons of powdered milk. You can even vary a bit and buy powdered coconut or even almond milk. To prepare them, you just need to mix it with a bit of water. And of course, coffee is a big survival food. It lasts a long time, although it won't bring you much nutrition. Coffee does have its share of antioxidants, which will help with a longer life. Plus, it helps with your brain's health, preventing dementia. You should get your share of canned food, beans, vegetables, even fish. Make sure you get some black beans, as they're high in iron. You need to have a sturdy immune system, since there won't be many doctors around, or they've turned into zombies. Canned pink salmon is a must-have in your apocalypse pantry. It's got a bunch of those omega-3 fatty acids, which will help with your brain and your heart health. It can last up to 6 years if stored correctly. And you gotta think about oats here. Oats are one of the world's healthiest foods. A bowl of oatmeal for breakfast can help you feel full longer, which is a great ally when food is being rationed. Rolled oats are simple to make and can be eaten without cooking, simply by letting them sit in water overnight. Now, corn. Flint corn is one of the best for long-term storage. It makes a pretty good cornmeal. You can even grind it and make a mean tortilla, in case you start to miss those Mexican night outs. It's best to store it whole and grind it only when you cook it, for durability, of course. Now, unfortunately, popcorn has more moisture than other varieties of corn and is not the best candidate for long-term storage. Let's just say popcorn doesn't make it into the apocalypse. Which leads us to another point. None of this will work if you don't know how to store your survival food. You need to create a storage location that is cool, dark, and dry. This can extend the shelf life of your food for up to 30 years. For the dehydrated stuff, you need to store it in airtight containers. Air is kind of a bad guy here, since it helps to oxidize a bunch of stuff. Most bacteria in our food need air in order to thrive. So if we cut out the air, this means more food for us.
The national Jamaican fruit, ackee, has a truly unique taste. It's mild and buttery, and people who tried it say it tastes just like scrambled eggs. It's safe to eat ackee only as long as it's fully ripe, so the import of raw ackees was banned in the US almost 50 years ago. The only edible part is the white creamy flesh itself. The pink flesh looks mouthwatering, but don't fall for it, it's highly toxic. Same with the black seeds. Soursop is one more fruit banned from the US because of its toxins. It's also referred to as guanabana and can release toxic substances, leading to some very unpleasant effects if not ripe. Soursop fans, don't be sad. Chances are you might find some frozen pulp in supermarkets. Another thing that should be 100% ripe to be safe is elderberry. Raw elderberry is rich in vitamin C, which is good for you, and cyanide, which is not that good. These berries are quite popular though. You can find them in pies, syrups, teas, jams, you name it. Fully ripe and cooked berries aren't dangerous. And nope, it's not banned. Cyanide doesn't seem that serious when it comes to food with tetrodotoxin, which is 1,200 times stronger. Pufferfish is a Japanese delicacy, and it's loaded with the substance. No person can eat this fish without consequences, but Japanese chefs have mastered their skills to perfection. To make it edible, they simply remove the poisonous parts. This delicacy is called fugu and costs about $200 per portion. You could buy a whole bunch of totally safe salmon instead. It's almost completely banned in the US. There are only a few authorized places that sell it, but you probably don't feel like having such a gastronomic adventure either way. Casu marzu literally means rotten cheese. Sorry, you can't try a bite of it in the US, so in case you can't resist the temptation, just head to the island of Sardinia, Italy. In fact, it's just sheep milk cheese with a pinch of, let's say, magic. Special flies leave their eggs right inside that cheese, and they stay there for 40 days. At the moment it's ready for consumption, this cheesy delicacy has some live maggots taking care of decomposing it. Thanks to them, the cheese has that distinctive texture and spicy flavor. It's banned in the US for sanitary reasons. Unlike soft and creamy casu marzu, the Himalayan cheese chirpy is famous for being the world's hardest. Just like any regular product of this type, it's made from milk. What makes it different is that it stays fresh for up to 20 years. The milk is quite special too. The cows, which are actually a cross between cows and yaks, eat a variety of mountain herbs. This milk has a unique flavor thanks to those herbs. But be careful with your teeth nibbling on that hard as stone cheese. In Singapore, you'll never have cavities because of chewing gum. And nope, it's not because they take care of your teeth. The thing is, it's completely illegal there. This place is known for its cleanliness, and the country spent a fortune cleaning all the spots and banning chewing gum. It was prohibited back in 1992, and vendors had to stop the sales immediately to avoid super high fines. Walking down the supermarket aisles while traveling to different destinations, you may spot that there's no raw milk in stock. It's prohibited in many US states and other countries, including Canada, Norway, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, and Scotland, for sanitary reasons. While raw milk is a no-go for Scotland, haggis is completely fine there. Still, it's banned in the US. If you live in the States and you're under 45, chances are you've never tried haggis, since it was prohibited almost half a century ago. This Scottish pudding is made of a full range of sheep's inner parts, mixed with some oatmeal and spiced up with a bunch of minced onions. Oh, and don't forget suet and some broth. The texture is crumbly and coarse, and no surprise, the dish is quite spicy. It's usually served with mashed potatoes or mashed turnip. Cassava is a poisonous tropical root with two types. The sweet variation does contain some cyanide, but it's enough to cook it to reduce the toxic content to a non-toxic level. To get rid of all the toxins in bitter cassava, it's necessary to grate the root, then soak it, and finally cook properly to make it edible. This root is very starchy, and its flavor is really subtle. Cassava can be used just like potatoes, mashed, boiled, or fried.
What you think? How about some haggis with mashed cassava instead of potatoes on the side?
By the way, harmless potatoes aren't that safe either. It all depends on whether it's ripe or not. So-called green potatoes are full of toxins, and potato sprouts are also quite unsafe. Same with green almonds and cashews, which are full of cyanide if not ripe enough. Luckily, the nuts we get at the supermarket are well processed, which means they're completely safe. Yellow plums, or Mirabelle plums, are banned in all the 50 states of America. These fruits are completely fine, and nothing bad happens if you eat them. But you can only enjoy these plums in Lorraine, France. The importation law is a bit bizarre, and this fruit is of protected origin. If sea bass is the kind of dish you just can't live without, then the UK isn't your destination. This fish has been recently banned there because of declines in the sea bass population. The same goes with beluga caviar in the US. One of the world's most expensive foods can't be found in America because of new regulations protecting the fish. Hey, feel like a burger with freshly cooked meat, the softest bun, and loads of ketchup? Go and grab it. Unless you're a French school student, there's a law in France regulating the use of ketchup in cafeterias for students, and they're only allowed to have it with, you guessed it, French fries. Greenland shark bodies get rid of all the waste they produce, filtering it through their flesh and skin, so no wonder their flesh is toxic. Sounds like a fair reason not to eat them, but not in Iceland. Hakarl, which is processed shark meat, is first hung to dry for 3 to 5 months. In the end, you get something like ammonia-smelling fermented fish with the jelly texture that reminds you of wet bread. Some things get better with age, unless it's food. But there's one cafe in Bangkok where they've been cooking the same beef and noodle soup for 45 years. This potion-like soup has been simmering for over 4 decades. The broth has never been thrown away, and it's always kept overnight for the next day's servings. One of the secrets of the unique flavor is the massive grease rim around the pan that formed because they never washed it. Okay, now I've got the perfect excuse to do the same thing. What? The food just tastes better this way. In Cambodia, you can try a crunchy, crispy snack that tastes somewhat like a crab. It's deep fried and a bit seasoned. The main ingredient is a tarantula. This doesn't quite sound like a lunch. Okay, well, you wouldn't have guessed it if I hadn't told you. This soup that sounds like a tongue twister is definitely scrumptious. The flavor is sharp, yet delicate, and it tastes just like shrimp. Well, this traditional Laotian dish sounds really cool, until you realize it's made of ant eggs. To give it a bit of sourness, they also tend to add a few tiny ants. In Mexico, you don't throw away corn kernels that have turned black because they're rotten. You keep them as a culinary specialty called huitlacoche. Fungus all over the kernel give that earthy, woody smell. Yum, yum. Some dishes just need decoration, especially cakes and pies. In England, there's a pie called stargazy. The name speaks for itself. The sardines, accompanied by potatoes and eggs, peek out of the pie's crust and stare at the skies. And it looks a bit creepy. Sometimes it's the tails that point at the skies, though. Tea mushroom is another weird thing that they drink in Eastern Europe, together with acid milk-based drinks. It's basically some fermented black or green tea. It's made by adding a whole culture of bacteria. They're not consumed, they just ferment the drink. To sweeten tea, the sugar acts like yeast. Add juice, spice, or whatever you want to taste. Enjoy! Or at least try to. Tuna eyeballs are quite a popular delicacy in China and Japan. They need to be boiled before eating, and some seasoning is required too. If you nail it, you'll have a delicacy that tastes like squid. And it costs less than $1. I bet you're eyeing that one.
You've never ever eaten a single bite of a real cinnamon roll in your entire life. All your fancy Italian dinners with your friends were a scam. And get this, most likely, you've never tried a legit milkshake. Feels like your entire life is a lie, right? Don't worry, I've got you covered. I'll expose all those lies to you. Watch until the end to know how supermarkets sell you a fake Caesar salad and why the only authentic thing you've ever eaten was that seemingly packed with colorant red velvet cake. Do you like mashed peas? I don't. I still have those flashbacks to when my mom made me eat this swamp-like slurry when I was a kid. But I love peanut butter. Well, these two are related. The thing is, peanuts are actually legumes, not nuts. Why do they even call it peanut butter if it doesn't contain real nuts? And is not a dairy product to be considered butter? No one knows for sure, but I guess it's just because of the texture that resembles other nut-based spreadable pastes. The main component of the Caesar salad is probably its dressing. It has a bunch of ingredients, such as olive oil, eggs, lemon juice, Worcestershire sauce. By the way, 3 hardest things to say out there are I love you, I apologize, and Worcestershire sauce. Sorry, I got carried away. I was just saying that supermarket Caesar salad is a scam, since lots of stores and even restaurants throw in mayo and other unexpected ingredients. Source? Trust me, bro. Farm-raised salmon usually looks as white as the Twilight protagonist, but don't sparkle. It's the skin of the salmon, Bella. I'm a salmon. Ahem. Sorry, let's carry on. Well, people normally trust neither vampires nor pale salmon. To give the trustworthy reddish-pink look to those fish, sneaky fish farmers add pigmenting compounds to salmon feed, which helps mimic the color of wild salmon. In the wild, salmon get that iconic hue from shrimp and algae, but their farm-raised peers sometimes get a boost from carotenoids added to their feed. Many fancy pestos at supermarkets are labeled alla Genovese to show they come from Genoa and have old-school Italian nonna recipes. But sometimes, manufacturers may throw in a bit of extra stuff to make their pesto thicker. Okay, I may understand the extra sugar in this sauce, but bamboo fibers? I mean, I love pandas, but I'm not a panda. Some time ago, American journalists hit up 25 sushi spots in NYC and LA to see if we were really getting the sushi we paid for. They visited those big shot celeb hangouts and local joints and collected samples. Ordered sushi and then sent them off to a lab for some DNA testing. If that was a TV show, the results would sound like, "You are not the father." The thing is, 68% of the samples were not what they claimed to be. It was often a cheaper fish. In NYC, white tuna usually turned out to be escolar, also known as the X-lax fish because instead of a nice aftertaste in your mouth, it can create a number 2 emergency. This fish is banned in Japan and Italy, but totally legal in the US. Things are even worse with wasabi. 95% of wasabi served in sushi restaurants is a knockoff. Yep, instead of fancy traditional Japanese stuff, you've been fed a cheap mix of horseradish, mustard flour, cornstarch, and green food coloring. Restaurants swear it's all about volatile compounds the real wasabi paste has that breaks down within minutes, but I have a bad feeling they just want to optimize costs as much as they can. If the apples you buy in supermarkets were kids, at the age they're sold, they'd be able to walk. While some produce like spinach is super fresh, apples often spend a long time in cold storage before hitting the shelves. In the US, apples are usually harvested between August and September. They're picked slightly unripe, treated with chemicals, yum, waxed, boxed, and then stored in cold warehouses for up to 12 months. In the US, the average supermarket apple is 14 months old, while in other countries, let's say Australia, they're slightly younger and are only around 10 months old. Red velvet cake color is all about chemistry. Cocoa powder has an antioxidant known as anthocyanin, which is sensitive to pH levels. It can react to both acids and bases. Buttermilk and vinegar, which are also part of the recipe, are acidic, so due to this simple reaction, the whole mixture gets a dark red hue. The resulting cake has more of a reddish-brown shade though, rather than bright red. The only problem is that it's difficult to replicate the natural reddish-brown color since most brands use an alkalizing agent to neutralize acidity during processing. And to get that color, cocoa powder must be raw. You see what I'm driving at, right? Those cakes you grab at your favorite coffee shop are packed with artificial food coloring. Stop calling these orange and yellow prepackaged slices cheese. Not only is it an insult to camembert, cheddar, and other cheese varieties, but it's also incorrect in terms of legal regulations. Even the FDA refuses to classify this product as real cheese. It contains less than 50% of actual cheese, with the remaining ingredients being fillers and additives. I guess those slices deserve their cheese product name. Many commercial blueberry products don't actually have any blueberries in them. Instead, they're full of sugar, corn syrup, and artificial flavors. Even big brands like Kellogg's and General Mills were guilty of that. But still, there are many real deals. Just make sure to check the ingredients list for the real blueberries, and remember, the best ingredient that can be put in a blueberry pie is your teeth. Let's normalize purple carrots, shall we? They used to be the norm. It wasn't until Dutch growers started some vegetable experiments that we ended up with the sweet orange carrots we all know today. The Dutch were on a mission to create a carrot that showcased their national colors, like orange for the House of Orange. Their carrot breeding efforts paid off, and soon the orange carrot was all the rage, pushing aside purple and yellow varieties. That canned pumpkin you grab every year isn't really pumpkin, or at least not always. Most of the time what you're getting is actually squash. The FDA doesn't care to differentiate between pumpkin and squash on food labels, so companies go for the tastier and more compact squash instead. The US has rules for grading and processing milk products to keep them safe to drink and prevent sickness. States can change the rules a bit, so you might see raw milk for sale in California, but never in Florida or Illinois. So, your favorite milkshake might not actually be a legal milkshake if it has too much or too little milk fat. Here's why McDonald's sells not milkshakes, but just shakes, as they're made of a soft-serve ice cream mix. There's this shocking truth about Dairy Queen. Despite serving the iconic Blizzard, they technically don't sell ice cream. The FDA's regulations require a certain amount of milk fat for a product to be classified as ice cream. Dairy Queen's soft serve falls short, only containing 5% butterfat, so they embrace the term soft serve for its frozen treats. Your cinnamon rolls are a lie. They don't have any real cinnamon in them. Many commercial cinnamon rolls use a less expensive variety of cinnamon called cassia, which is closely related to true cinnamon species. Portobello mushrooms are not a unique type of mushroom, but rather mature cremini mushrooms that have been allowed to grow bigger in size. So here, we've only got the age difference. The belief that churros are Mexican is yet another food misconception. The origin of churros is still a mystery, with varying claims as to who invented the popular pastry. While some believe it was Spanish shepherds, Portuguese sailors, or Chinese individuals, there is no definitive proof to confirm any group as the original inventors. Some truffle oils out there actually have real truffles in them, but most of those you see in stores use this synthetic stuff with a complicated name instead. It basically mimics the taste and smell of real truffles, so companies can make truffle oil without breaking the bank. Bet you've never heard of corrugation. It's a system that may lie hidden in your pantry right now. Ever notice those bumps on food cans? That's exactly what they're called. And they're not just for aesthetics. First off, they make the can extra strong. That's because they can help it from cracking during the manufacturing process. Plus, these corrugations come in handy during delivery, acting like a shield to make sure there's no spillage. They're also useful in the long run because they help keep the cans in their original shape. Even when things get too hot or too cold, these corrugations let them breathe a bit. They expand and contract without breaking the metal. You may not notice any cracks on regular cans, but even the tiniest of openings can leave a way for nasty bacteria to get in contact with the food. Not to mention, they create this little air gap, so when you pop the can open, everything slides out smoothly, without you having to put in that much effort. You know what also doesn't require much effort? Hitting that subscribe button and liking this video. You know there's a plant out there that's so eager to reach the sun, you can hear it grow? Rhubarb, just before it's picked from the fields, soaks up all the sun rays it can get to make glucose. After this sunbathing session, it gets transported to dark sheds. Inside, it keeps on growing and uses the stored glucose as fuel. Nothing out of the ordinary so far, but in that dark, cozy, and warm place, rhubarb starts acting weird. That environment pushes the plant to stretch itself out in hopes it will find sun rays again. It happens so fast that you can actually hear the buds and stalks making noise as they pop open. To make sure this process goes smoothly, there's no light allowed. If light hits the rhubarb at this point, it will start photosynthesizing again and go bitter. Speaking of everyday groceries, you might have noticed that veggie bags come with some green stripes. Know that it's a sneaky optical trick. Those stripes fool our eyes into believing the veggies look way greener than they are. And it's not just veggies that get this special packaging. Oranges are often sold in red mesh bags for the same reason. Lemons? They go for yellow or green bags for that same pop of color. If your cooking skills aren't that good and you're just afraid you're going to mess up dinner yet again, stick to mushrooms. That's because they're almost impossible to overcook. Unlike other vegetables that turn into mush when overcooked, mushrooms are way more resistant. They've got this interesting substance called chitin, a molecular structure that works like an armor. So you can cook them forever. They won't burn. Donuts don't have holes in them because it's easier for you to pick them up. If you've ever tried to make them at home, you might have noticed that when you fry the dough, the outside gets done quickly, thanks to the hot oil. If you want the inside to look just as good, you have to keep it in the oil way longer, but then the outside would get too brown. Thanks to that middle hole, the heat gets to both sides equally, cooking up a flawless donut. Here's how that small piece of paper makes it into your fortune cookie. First, they bake these cookies flat, like pancakes. Then, while they're still warm and bendy, they sneak in those tiny messages. As the cookies cool down, they toughen up and keep their shape, trapping the fortune inside like a tasty time capsule. One legend has it that these Asian treats were initially intended to help people send all sorts of secret messages without causing any suspicion. Here's a little tip for whenever you're buying lunch at a fast food place. Skip the word extra when you're ordering. The moment you speak that term, you're tempting the employees to charge more. Instead, go for something like, "A little more, please," when you're getting a special burrito bowl. According to a UK study, cheese is the most stolen of foods worldwide. It's estimated that around 4% of all cheese just vanishes from stores. And no, it's not mice doing the stealing, it's people. Why? Because cheese is becoming more and more valuable. The price of cheese is constantly going up, and sneaky thieves are trying to make easy money by simply taking it from the racks. It's not just cheese, though. Other interesting items on the thieving list include fresh meat, chocolate, and seafood. Ferrero, the company behind those luscious jars of Nutella, needs about 25% of the world's hazelnuts every year. So if you think about it, 1 in 4 hazelnuts ends up in a chocolatey jar. The manufacturers get the nuts from Turkey, Italy, and Chile, making sure they get them delivered from both the northern and southern hemispheres to keep things fresh. Nutella's impact on the economy is even bigger than you'd imagine. Because of this demand, the price of hazelnuts went through the roof. In 2014, a frost hit Turkey's hazelnuts, supply got halved, and prices were even higher. Now, even places like New Jersey are trying to grow those Nutella-worthy nuts. When you imagine someone trying to sneak something into space, your first thought wouldn't be a sandwich. But back in 1965, during a Gemini mission, astronaut John Young brought a corned beef sandwich on board, going against NASA rules. He hid it in his spacesuit pocket before blastoff. About 2 hours into the 5-hour trip, he went to the mission commander and offered him this unlawful treat. The commander, being a good sport, took it, and they shared a quick, savory moment. He even put the unfinished sandwich in his own spacesuit pocket to avoid crumbs making a mess of the spacecraft. Meanwhile, the official NASA-approved food was waiting patiently in a box nearby. Surely, radishes aren't your first pick when it comes to salad ingredients, but they have quite an interesting history too. These mustard, broccoli, cabbage, and cauliflower cousins have been grown and eaten for longer than you'd imagine, even before the Romans were famous in ancient Egyptian times. In fact, radishes were used as currency for the people who built the pyramids, alongside onions and garlic. You'd think the English are champions when it comes to drinking tea, but you'd be wrong. Turkey is in fact the tea capital of the world. Every Turk drinks an average of 1,300 cups of tea each year. On a regular day, they're sipping on 3 to 5 cups, but when winter hits, they can reach 10 cups a day. Locals claim tea is like a social custom for them. It's more than just a hot beverage. It's an excuse to sit down, enjoy the atmosphere, and connect with loved ones. When it comes to types, black tea is preferred. There might be a magical drink hidden in your fridge. It's tonic water, and it might be able to glow in the dark. If you're curious, test it out with some ultraviolet light. The secret behind this glow is pretty simple. Tonic water has quinine, a chemical that lights up under certain conditions. Quinine was used back in the day to treat certain health problems. The stuff was so bitter that some people started mixing it with sugar and soda water. In simple terms, things glow because they absorb light energy, gets all excited, and then releases it as visible light. Quinine in tonic water absorbs and releases energy, making your drink look like it's from a fairy tale. There's an interesting connection between what we hear and what we taste. Scientists investigated and found that people worldwide link certain sounds with specific flavors, and they call it cross-modal correspondence. High-pitched sounds match up with sweet and sour tastes, while the lower, jarring sounds go hand in hand with bitterness. If it's staccato, think crunchy, and if it's smooth and flowing, think creamy. Some even found music that can enhance the taste of chocolate. In this study, when people listened to a high-pitched, sweet soundtrack while eating chocolate, they thought it was sweeter than when they'd heard a lower, more dissonant soundtrack.
Now, up for a guessing game? It's going to be pretty simple. I'll be giving you the name of some food, and you must guess what it is. This might seem easy, but the farther you get, the tougher the questions are. So, let's start. The first food on our list is Cheetos. So, what are they? If your answer was chips, sorry, but you're wrong. The right answer is puffs, and it's explained by the method they use to make Cheetos. They're made of corn, and they have their signature shape thanks to an extruder that shapes them. The main difference between chips and puffs is that chips are fried and puffs, like Cheetos, can be processed in several ways. For example, they can be baked. Next, we have a dish called Welsh Rabbit. All I can say now is that it's super yummy. Can you guess what the Welsh Rabbit is? The name is pretty misleading, I know that, But in reality, a Welsh rabbit has nothing to do with rabbit. It's actually an 18th century recipe with hot melted cheese generously poured over toast. Told you it's delish. Now, lion's head. Yep, that's a dish, and we already know that the name is quite misleading. So, any ideas? This is pretty simple. A dish called a lion head is just a meatball. It's a traditional Chinese dish, and it has many alterations. Hey, if you can add up some broccoli on your plate, it might even look like a mane, and the meatball can resemble the head. But you have to have quite a poetic mind for that. Now let's imagine you're having dinner at a posh restaurant, and you see sweetbreads on the menu. You don't want to seem ignorant and ask the waiter about the dish, so you have to make a decision yourself. Can you guess what it is, and would you grab it? To grab or not to grab? That is the question. Sure thing, tastes differ, but if you expect to have a cake or a fancy muffin when you order sweetbreads, you're going to be terribly disappointed. Thing is, sweetbreads are the thymus gland of animals. Good news, you're not very likely to get into such a situation in a restaurant, as sweetbreads aren't common today. Now, another thing that may sound fancy, but is not fancy at all, prairie oysters. I believe you've already guessed these are not oysters. Any ideas about what it really is? Okie dokie, here's the recipe for prairie oysters. All you need is a raw egg, some Worcestershire sauce, and hot sauce. And if you want to spice it up a little bit, just add some vinegar and a bit of tomato juice. Now, there's another version which uses the part that turns a bull into a steer, and I'll leave it right there. All right, this name is truly poetic. You need to use your imagination to guess what it is. So, ants climbing a tree. What kind of dish could it be? No ants are involved here. Actually, it looks very much like pasta bolognese, but it's a Chinese dish, Szechuan, to be more precise. It's made of ground meat that represents ants and bean noodles that represent trees. It's pretty hot as there is chili paste. There's no info about what exactly chili paste represents, but I guess it might represent a hot summer day. Next, we have a dish called bubble and squeak. This one seems pretty simple though. Just think about it. What can squeak when we cook it? So, some foods do squeak when we put them over the heat. Bubble and squeak is a hash, and you can cook it with different leftover veggies you've got in your fridge. They say it's the cabbage that gives that signature squealing sound, but it's not the only ingredient for sure. It's commonly made with potatoes, onions, and cabbage. But you can play with the recipe a bit. Now, what about a dish called hen of the woods? Any ideas? Nope, these are not chicken wings. It has nothing to do with hens or chicks, actually. It's a mushroom, and it has plenty of names, too. You can call it a ram's head, a sheep's head, a dancing mushroom, and even a monkey's bench. These mushrooms can be consumed fried, but traditionally they're considered to be medicinal mushrooms. They're usually about the size of a potato, but sometimes they can grow up to 100 pounds. So big, in fact, that there's not much room left. Okay, sorry. Congrats, you've made it through 50% of the questions. Next up is the parson's nose. Yeah, it's tough, so I'll give you some hints here. Pick one of the options. It's a dish made of veggies, it's a dish made of chicken, it's a cake. Time's up. Hen of the woods may not be made of chicken, but parson's nose definitely has some chicken in it. Technically, it's a chicken's behind. Look right here, this little triangular thing. Some chefs don't like leaving this part on the chicken before roasting it, but others believe it's quite good. Thing is, the flavor of that part is pretty rich because of the oils the birds produce. Now, it's getting even harder. So, what do you think cat's tongues are? This one is pretty popular around the world. I mean, who doesn't like cookies? Right. Cat's tongues are the cookies that are popular in France, the Netherlands, and even the Philippines. There are different techniques of how to achieve this specific shape. Some chefs use pastry bags, and others prefer molds. The cookies are delicate and sweet, and sometimes have a buttercream filling. They can also be served with ice cream and even dipped in chocolate. Ooh, yumbo! Egg hoppers is the next misleading name we have on the list. So, what's your guess? Egg hoppers may sound a bit like grasshoppers, but sure thing, this dish cannot jump. This dish looks very similar to an average French crepe, but the ingredients are pretty different. Instead of wheat flour, they use rice flour, and regular milk is replaced with coconut milk. Not hard to guess, it's a dish that you can find in some parts of Southeast Asia and in India. Now we know that egg hoppers don't relate to grasshoppers, but what about a grasshopper pie? Now, even though bugs can be cooked in some countries and they can be part of a national cuisine, a grasshopper pie is 100% bug-free. It's made with graham cracker crumbs, creme de menthe, creme de cacao, and some heavy cream. So it has an exotic name because of its color, and it's delicious. Next, we have a dish with quite a particular name. It's called the priest fainted. I'm going to help you a little bit with this one. It's made with veggies, so all you need to do is guess what veggie you need to cook this dish. The main ingredient here is an eggplant. Also, there should be some tomatoes and a lot of olive oil. The flavor of this dish is super intense. Eskimo ice cream. Does this sound sweet to you? Well, sorry to break it to you, but you won't find this one in an ice cream parlor. Yeah, it has some berries in it, but it also has some reindeer fat, seal oil, and even some ground fish. They say the texture is nice and pretty creamy, but it still doesn't sound like a dessert. Next up, egg cream. You might have already guessed that it has neither eggs nor cream. What could it be? First off, it's a drink. It's made of some milk, fizzy water, and any syrup to your liking. Typically, they use chocolate or vanilla syrup. It's mostly a fountain drink. Some entrepreneurs tried to bottle it, but to keep it as refreshing as it should be, the ingredients should be mixed right before you drink it. Ah, the last but not the least, the final thing to be guessed here is Bombay duck. So, what do you think it is? For some unknown reason, it's fish, lizard fish to be more specific. In Sri Lanka, people dry it first and then consume it. Otherwise, they temper it, fry it, or can even cook it as a curry. Well, that's it for today. Share the most deceptively named foods you know in the comments.
Picture this. It's a cloudy, misty morning in the middle of winter. Tom wakes up, a bit nervous for the day ahead. He's leaving on a long journey through uncharted waters. His captain says they will try to leave England and make it all the way to the Americas. He's ready and packed to leave his house when his wife reminds him to take the biscuits he had spent the night preparing. Let's zoom in on these biscuits right here. They look a bit strange, don't they? These are called ship's biscuits, and they were literally the biscuits that sailors ate during long voyages at sea. A ship's biscuit could go years without going bad. I know that sounds impossible, but the secret is in the ingredients and baking methods. When sailors departed, they didn't know how long they would go without setting foot on land again, so they needed to be ready, food-wise. Otherwise, they could perish from extreme hunger. So bakers came up with this simple biscuit. It's mostly made out of 3 ingredients: salt, flour, and a bit of water. The idea is that the dough stayed as stiff as it could. Then, bakers would put them in the oven for hours, at very low temperatures. The purpose of this slow baking was to take off all the moisture in the biscuits. Even if you're not an experienced sailor, you might suspect that moisture is the enemy of food preservation. It makes stuff get moldy and attracts insects and other animals. Plus, a ship is already an extremely moist environment. So the biscuits had to go on the countercurrent of all of that. A ship's biscuit can go 6, 7, 8 years without going bad. The little holes you see on them help to get the moisture out during the cooking process. A sailor like Tom, medium-sized, would get a portion of 6 to 8 ship's biscuits per day. They were extremely nutritious and satiated a person's hunger. Now, this was a type of survival food. It wasn't meant to be super pleasurable, yummy, or even give you all the nutrients you needed. Just the basics. Now, do you have any idea what life was like in the 18th century? If you think about a city like New York, there were only about 18,000 people living there. For comparison, today the city hosts more than 8 million people. Back then, if someone had to travel from New York to Boston, there wouldn't be any of the convenience stores there were along the way. I mean, there weren't even roads as we know them now. So, people needed to make food provisions. And this is where portable soup came in handy. If you imagined a boiling pot of meat and veggies, I'm sorry to inform you, you are wrong. Portable soup is hard and condensed. It looks like this. Portable soup is a type of solidified broth, a very, very condensed substance made essentially of meat. Think about it. It's convenient, it's light, it doesn't take up much space, but it's extremely hard to make. The best meat to make portable soup is one with a lot of collagen, like beef shank, and the secret is slow cooking. You can't lose sight of it though, because if it boils up, you ruin the whole thing. While cooking the meat, it will release its taste in the water in the pot, and after a few hours, it's safe to take the beef out. The remaining water will be rich in nutrients and fats, and once you reduce that down for about 18 to 24 hours, you'll get a gelatine-like nutritional substance. Once this cools down, it turns into a tablet of sorts. It's pretty amazing to witness the entire transformation process, but hey, this dark tablet is really satiable. And to eat it, you just needed to find some hot water and put the meat tablet inside of it. It would release all the condensed nutrients in it, giving you a warm, hearty meal. Here's a trick question for you. Do you know why hamburgers are called hamburgers if they are not made out of ham? Apparently, it has to do with the city they were first invented in, the city of Hamburg in Germany. But it wasn't what we are used to today. I mean, they didn't even use ketchup. Well, at least not the tomato ketchup we use now. But did you know that other types of ketchup have existed throughout history? As weird as it may sound, back in the 18th century, people ate mushroom ketchup. For your information, if you look up ketchup in some dictionaries, it is by definition a sauce made out of mushrooms. It has nothing to do with tomatoes. I wonder where people got that idea from. Anyways, to make it you can use any type of mushrooms. Even shiitake if you're feeling fancy. The idea is to smash them, cook them, and add a bunch of spices to the mix. I'm talking clove, nutmeg, ginger, pepper, and whatever else your palate wishes for. And in case you're wondering what our ancestors ate it with, I have one word for you: meat. They would pour mushroom ketchup over a nice piece of steak, for example, like a gravy sauce or something like it. Now, if this just left your mouth full of water, I have good news. You can still find mushroom ketchup in Great Britain. It's just North America that kind of forgot it. Neat, huh? And what did people eat back in the day when they were feeling unwell? Today, we have a concept of food I particularly love: comfort food, which is something to eat when you are feeling down and sad. But then, on the days you're feeling sick, what do you eat? I immediately think of a warm soup or something nutritious and light. Our forefathers drank something called posset. Now, posset could be described as an eggnog with some sweets added into it. Its recipe can be traced down to as early as the 15th century. The drink was considered such a reliable remedy that Shakespeare even used it as a poison in Macbeth. Here's another quick pop quiz for you. Why do we say the proof is in the pudding? This famous expression simply means that you'll only know the true value of something once you experience it for yourself. The expression started to be used back in the 1600s, but there's an important thing to note here. In Britain, pudding is not the sweet dessert known by many in America. Rather, it's a savory dish, much like a pie. I guess it's safe to say that the British are good at turning almost anything into pie. From apple pie to pumpkin pie, chicken pot pie, and so on. Now, in the 18th century, they had something called beefsteak pie. This was an incredibly popular dish back then, but somewhere along the way we lost the habit of making it. Sure, you can find steak and kidney pudding today, but it's got all sorts of stuff in it, such as potatoes, carrots, and thick gravy. Up until the 19th century, people ate the stripped-down version of this dish, which was basically made out of richly flavored meat. They say breakfast is the most important meal of the day. If you're in the US, you might eat some avocado on toast or a rich bowl of cereal. If you're in Vietnam, you might enjoy a warm bowl of broth soup or rice. But if you were eating breakfast in 18th century England, or even the United States, you would get something like this: This is the old school version of what we know as bacon and eggs. Except that back then, it was called collops and eggs. According to the traditional Hannah Glass recipe, straight from the most famous cookbooks of back then, the egg wasn't fried or boiled. It was poached, and the bacon was probably not as processed as we eat them today. A little toast was added on the side, and there you had it. The perfect start for a long day.
So, Alexander the Great, one of the most famous figures in ancient history, was apparently a big fan of one summer treat beloved by many to this day. Marco Polo, the Italian explorer and writer, is said to have brought back from Asia a recipe resembling sorbet, a frozen dessert made by mixing sugar-sweetened water with different types of flavoring. This dessert, which was later named cream ice, was a frequent treat at the court of Charles I of England in the 17th century. In France, it was Catherine de' Medici who introduced the beloved frozen dessert soon after she married Henry II. The frozen treat became available for the general public somewhere in the 1660s, when a Sicilian man blended milk, cream, butter, and eggs at Café Procope, the first known café in Paris. Thomas Jefferson himself had a preferred recipe for ice cream, which took a staggering 18 steps to complete. Ice cream has become so important in popular culture that it even has its own laws and regulations to accompany it, to make sure ice cream is always produced with its certain levels of quality. Not every frozen dessert you see out there is, in fact, ice cream. To be commercialized under this name, the Icy Delight needs to contain a minimum of 10% dairy milk fat and mustn't weigh less than 4.5 pounds per gallon. Genuine ice cream doesn't actually need to be too fluffy. In technical terms, that means it must have no more than 100% overrun. So, to get to that specific texture we've all come to know and love, the ice cream base needs to be sufficiently whipped, but only to a certain percentage. Specifically, for every gallon of ice cream base, the end products must not exceed 2 gallons after whipping. Your favorite summer dessert can yet again be broken down into many other subcategories, like reduced fat ice cream, low-fat ice cream, or non-fat ice cream, based on, what do you think, fat percentage. To have a solid idea of what you're ordering each time, it's best to look at the nutritional information of each product. One interesting type of frozen dessert is gelato. Although it literally translates to ice cream in Italian, there are differences between the two again, based on regulations on milk fat content. Gelato normally has less milk fat than ice cream officially should have, but since it has a low overrun, about 20 to 30%, the end result is still dense and rich in texture. The Italians also mention that gelato shouldn't have less than 3.5% of fat. If this doesn't seem complicated enough, the French also bring their own twist to the dessert. French ice cream, also known as frozen custard, apart from the standard ingredients, also needs to have eggs added to the mixture, with no less than 1.4% egg yolk. You've probably mislabeled many other food items, like say raspberries, as they're actually a member of the rose family, along with cherries, apricots, plums, pears, apples, peaches, or blackberries. They are added to this category based on their flowers. They bloom in 5 equal petals arranged around a central core. Bananas are considered berries, while strawberries aren't since they belong to the same rose family. We also share about 50% of our DNA with bananas, which explains why both bananas and certain attractive people can both have appeal. Another common misconception: white chocolate isn't actually chocolate, since it doesn't contain any chocolate solids. It's made only from a mixture of sugar, milk products, vanilla, lecithin, and cocoa butter. Parents all over the world don't try to convince their kids to eat broccoli for no reason. On a calorie-by-calorie basis, it turns out that broccoli has nearly as much protein in it as a steak. Now, I'm not convinced parents actually know that, but given the low fat content, broccoli has many other health benefits as opposed to meat. We now see it as the mandatory companion for fries, but at some point in time, ketchup was actually considered to have healing properties. In the 1880s, a doctor based in Ohio indicated that tomatoes could help treat digestive issues. publishing a ketchup-like formula that was later transformed into a pill. Hey, you want to have a pill with those fries? Speaking of French fries, it turns out one of the most popular side dishes in the world isn't actually French. Potatoes served this way actually originated in Belgium, but they're called that because of how they're cut, and maybe also because the name Brussels sprouts was already taken. I'm almost certain there's a jar of peanut butter somewhere in your cupboard, but I'll bet you didn't know how valuable it actually was, and I'm not talking about peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Studies have shown that Americans go through enough peanut butter to coat the floor of the Grand Canyon each year. Just to be a bit more precise here, that's about 500 million pounds. Hey, if somebody did that on YouTube, I'd watch. The pink coloring of salmon isn't always like that by default. Wild salmon is pink due to a large amount of shrimp they consume natively. Farm-raised salmon, however, is generally white, so producers need to add plant-based pigments to get that light pink hue. Carrots weren't originally orange either. The red-yellow tint we are now familiar with comes from a genetic mutation of the well-known vegetable that occurred somewhere in the 16th century. Carrots were initially white or purple. Just like you add ketchup to the side of fries, you're most likely having a dab of wasabi with every plate of sushi. Well, it's most certainly dyed horseradish. The Japanese alternative to horseradish is quite expensive. That's why 99% of restaurants in the US actually use regular horseradish instead. You may see them packed together in the supermarket, but red, green, and yellow peppers aren't actually the same vegetable. You'd need different types of seeds to be able to grow them individually, as they're each their own type of plant species. Did you know 1 in 4 hazelnuts ends up in a Nutella jar? The creamy spread is so popular that scientists are looking into ways to grow hazelnuts in labs to counteract the global shortage. That's something to think about when you ask for an extra topping. Sure, there's an expiration date on each bottle of water, but the water itself doesn't actually expire. The date mentioned there is, in fact, for the bottle itself, since the plastic can eventually leak harmful substances into the water. Ever wondered why airplane food sometimes tastes bland? The chef may not always be to blame. The altitude you're flying at has some effects on your body chemistry, making you taste things differently. You've added it to a salad at least once, but you may be surprised to know that cilantro and coriander are not in fact the same thing. Coriander is what the dried seeds are called, while the leaves and the stems go by cilantro. So now you know. For all the fruit lovers out there, scientists came up with a fruit salad tree. Yep, that's right, a tree that can grow different types of fruit at the same time. They were developed in Australia and can support up to 6 different types of fruit. There's a stone fruit variation that features peaches, plums, nectarines, apricots, and peachcots, and a citrus variation for those who prefer lemons, limes, mandarins, oranges, or even tangelos, pomelos, and grapefruits. You most likely avoid it because it can give you bad breath, but garlic is considered one of the most nutrient-dense foods out there. A single clove of garlic can contain 2% of your vitamin B6 for the whole day. Studies have shown that the chemical that gives garlic its distinctive flavor, called allicin, is good for your health. The only type of food that never spoils when stored properly is honey, or at least the only one we've discovered so far. That's because it contains a high amount of sugar and has a low moisture content. An enzyme created by bees also helps do the trick, as it can suppress any bacterial growth. Of course, if you store your honey the wrong way and expose it to additional moisture, it can go bad. But honey that is sealed and stored correctly technically has no expiration date. Now, if you're just starting out with your cooking skills, you'll be pleased to know mushrooms can't be overcooked. That's because they contain a polymer called chitin. This chemical allows them to remain tender even if you cook them from a few minutes to up to an hour. Hey, just add some butter and garlic. Nobody will ever know.
Is this safe to eat? We sometimes see strange dots on our potatoes and wonder if we should just throw them away. Here are 10 eat or toss facts. Did you know that every year 119 billion pounds of food is wasted only in the United States? To put it in perspective, this number means nearly 40% of all food in America is wasted. People throw away food if they don't have confidence in the ingredients. They're being cautious, and it makes sense. But what if the food is safe to eat and only looks weird? The first item on the list is beef. When it comes to meat, people naturally get extra cautious. Imagine you buy some raw beef in the store. Later on, you realize it's got some brown spots. If you toss it immediately, hear me out. This is normal. In fact, you can see brown layers also inside the beef. Bright red color equals fresh meat, huh? Not necessarily. When the meat is first cut, it's maroon. If the meat is quickly vacuum packaged, it will keep that shade. But if the meat is exposed to air for like 15 minutes, then oxygen will cause a change in the look to red. The redness can turn brown when the biochemical reaction starts. This can take a few hours. Workers at the grocery stores grind the meat several times a day to achieve that bright red color because they know consumers are cautious about maroon-looking beef. If the beef is wrapped in an oxygen-permeable plastic, it turns bright red after exposure to oxygen. As long as the meat smells and feels fresh, and if it's been stored properly, it should be safe to eat. Have you ever come across dark lines under a shrimp shell? This one has a similar story to beef. Black lines on your shrimp's flesh are related to a natural phenomenon. They gradually occur after shrimps are taken from the water. Meat is exposed to oxygen, and the blackness gets more visible over time. Here also, the pattern of the animal itself can be a factor. These black lines can be a naturally occurring discoloration on the shrimp. Think of cats. They also have different color patterns, but they're the same in terms of species. Next time, you can conduct a mini experiment in your kitchen. Put a couple of shrimp side by side and observe the mild differences in the shrimp's color patterns. Shrimp will have a distinct bad odor when it's no longer edible, so if it smells and tastes fresh, don't toss it. Should you eat moldy yogurt? That green substance on the surface doesn't look appealing at all. But if you scoop it out, you seem to have clean yogurt underneath. The short answer is toss it. The mold could be seen on the top only, but it has probably gone deep. Not to mention that it'll taste bad. Many molds are harmless, but some produce toxic substances. Green mold is a type of penicillium. Does this word sound familiar? That's the same type of mold used in the antibiotic penicillin. Don't get too excited. Eating moldy yogurt won't magically cure bacterial infections. It only spoils your dairy product. In 2013, there was an outbreak related to one line of yogurts. The company handed the products to stores as usual. After some time, they received customer complaints. They said that the yogurt looked like yogurt soup and tasted really old. Turns out that a type of fungus probably released some carbon dioxide. It made the product fizzy and bloating. Ugh. The company and another independent scientist both said that this fungus in question wasn't usually harmful to people. Yet, more than 200 people reported becoming affected by it. So, these sorts of things can still happen. You should trust your spidey sense. If you've ever been lucky enough to see some mold in a freshly opened package, reach out to the manufacturer. You'll potentially save others from facing the same scenery by notifying the company about a systemic issue and preventing potential future product waste. Plus, the company probably wants to make amends and either reimburse your sad yogurt with a happy one, or better, they'll give you coupons for free products. Why do avocados sometimes have brown dots inside? Technically, it's edible, but you might not want to eat it. Avocados are a source of many vitamins like C, E, K, and B6, as well as healthy stuff like magnesium, potassium, and more. The avocado works hard to become such a health storage. Nutrients, water, and sugars wander around this fruit. Yes, technically, avocado is classified as a fruit. Anyway, avocados have their own transport channels, like veins. These channels are normally invisible to us. Until something goes out of the ordinary, the avocado may be stored in too cold temperatures for a longer time than it should. As a result, the tissue cells might be weakened and start to deteriorate. Experts say that after the fruit is harvested, if it stays in the refrigerator for a few weeks before you buy it, vascular browning can occur. This phenomenon becomes visible after you keep the avocado at room temperature for a few days. Don't be hard on yourself, it's not because of you. So should you eat it or toss it? You can eat the brown dotted avocados, but you may want to taste them first. They might not taste good compared to a regular one. What about the white area under the potato peel? Eat or toss? This area is also like dark bruise marks, but it's not black. If the outer layer of the potato looks normal, that odd-looking white knot is not mold. The moldy potatoes deteriorate. They'll get softer, wrinkled, or squishy. As long as the exterior of this potato appears clean and regular, there's probably no harmful microbial growth inside of it. These strikingly white areas can be shaped due to potatoes being bruised, possibly in the field during the harvesting period. To sum up, you can eat it. There's also an issue of white smears coming out when we slice potatoes. You see the marks on the cutting board? Experts say that some potatoes have a higher level of water and starch content. As a result, your cutting board gets a bit messier than usual. No need to worry about it. I'm gonna carry on with another form of potato. Not because I love every version of potato and I can eat it in all meals from breakfast to dinner, but because I want to know, what are those brown spots on potato chips? Should we eat or toss them? Consider these as minor imperfections. They don't affect the safety of the chip. They're there again because of the bruises they get or as a result of frying. Sometimes you see that your garlic is trying to make more garlic out of itself. Yep, it has sprouted. The question is it okay to eat sprouted cloves, or should you toss them? If the green sprout is in the center of the garlic clove, that's fine. Be aware that the taste of the garlic will be stronger than it usually is. It will still be perfectly okay in a cooked meal, since it'll be alongside other ingredients. The taste shouldn't be that harsh. Can we eat an apple with worms? Most people can't even stand the idea of accidentally eating an apple with a worm, but that's a cultural thing. So the answer is yes, we can eat it. After all, worms add a little protein to the fruit. These animals don't carry any harmful parasites. They make their way into the apple. The entrance point of the fruit might have an off flavor since it got sort of rotten in time. Besides the taste, the rotten part is all safe to bite. What might not be so safe is eating the fallen apples though. Those have probably been hanging out on the ground for quite some time. This period might be enough for the harmful bacteria from the soil to sneak into the apple. There were some cases where people experienced health issues by drinking unpasteurized apple juice made from dropped apples. Yeah, the ones that interact with unhealthy bacteria. Flies are everywhere we go, literally. It's believed that flies originated in Asia, but these days, they live everywhere people live, only excluding Antarctica and maybe a couple of islands. Flies have traveled the oceans following humans, but they never go anywhere alone. In the wilderness and deserts where humans are absent, you won't find any flies. We know them well, but we all have that unanswered question about flies. Why do flies rub their limbs? Turns out, they just clean them. It's this simple. A fly has hair all over its body. The hairs on the limbs serve as detectors for flying, finding food, and doing whatever else the fly business is. They have to keep their limbs clean at all times. So, they just rub them every time they get a chance. Their limbs are sensitive, and they serve more than one purpose. Apparently, the limbs have taste receptors, so the flies can taste with their feet. They can land on their potential meal and wander around it, giving it a good taste before consuming it. Flies can't chew, so they're on an all-liquid diet and drink their food. If the food they have picked as their next meal is solid, they have a special ritual to make it edible. A fly regurgitates digestive juices on their soon-to-be food, and those juices break it into the smallest pieces that can be drunk. Also, spitting out those juices frees up space in their stomachs for new food. Quite often, flies sit on our food. They can appear harmless, but it's not exactly true. First, remember that they spill out those juices onto your food, which is already gross enough. But there's more. You have to keep in mind that flies land everywhere, and it's not always flowers, but all the gross stuff as well. And flies especially like that said gross stuff, like rotting foods, dumpsters, and even worse. So, their limbs collect all the germs and microbes from those places. When a fly lands on your food, it transfers those germs to your meal. Some of the microbes they transfer can even cause diseases like cholera and typhoid. There was even an experiment once made to demonstrate how it works. There were two bowls. One contained a red powder of some kind of spice, and the other bowl had white rice in it. Flies were let in, and they would migrate from the spice bowl to the rice bowl and back. Soon enough, rice got covered with red spice. Now, replace harmless spice with something grosser, and rice with your dinner. So you should always cover your food to make sure some fly doesn't take a walk on it and step and spit all over it. If you're eating, make sure you swat them away. But don't worry if some annoying fly manages to sit on your sandwich for a second before you kick it out. No need to throw the sandwich out. If you acted fast, then you're safe. Also, experts say that an average healthy human has a strong enough immune system to repel parasites. Even though flies are gross and annoying, bugging around and tickling you with their limbs, they do serve some good. They're responsible for pollinating flowers. They collect nectar from them, which gets stuck to their hair on their bodies, and then they pollinate the next flower when landing on it. Also, if flies didn't exist, our planet would be even dirtier. Flies recycle some of the human waste. Flies are also an important part of the ecosystem since they're food for birds, spiders, lizards, frogs, and many more. Without flies, they'd all go extinct. Apart from flies having the superpower of tasting with their feet, there are other interesting facts about them too. They can walk on both horizontal and vertical surfaces, and even upside down. They can do it because each one of a fly's feet has two pads with tiny hair. And those hairs produce a glue-like substance that allows flies to have an excellent grip. Flies have unique eyes, which have a large complex of 3,000 to 6,000 simpler eyes within each of the two compound eyes. A fly's eyes don't move, but its vision is nearly 360 degrees. They can see behind their back, so wherever you are, a fly definitely sees you, and every other danger with one or a few of their thousands of monitors. In addition to the two compound eyes, flies also have three simple eyes located on their foreheads, which serve as a compass and allow a fly to navigate. They also have an amazing reaction time. Ever wondered why it's so hard to swat a fly? Well, to a fly, we're sloths. That's because they see things in slow motion compared to us. Species have different perceptions of speed. The speed we see will be twice faster for a turtle, and it will be 4 times slower for a fly. Turn a video on at 0.25 times speed and imagine someone approaching you with this speed. Well, that's how a fly sees you. So yes, it has enough time to escape. A fly has just one set of wings. But in addition to their pair of wings, they also have so-called halters, which allow them to take off fast. Millions of years ago, halters were serving as a second pair of wings. Now they help to take off and also to balance the air. If a fly loses one of the halters, it'll start flying in circles. And if both of them go missing, it won't be able to fly anymore at all. Also, even though their wings beat up to 1,000 times per minute, they're also very slow flyers, only reaching the speed of 4.5 miles per hour. If a fly lives in an urban area with enough people and garbage around, it doesn't fly far away from the place of residence, only having a territory of a bit over 3,200 feet. Rural flies are far more explorative, and they can fly away up to 7 miles at a time. A fly doesn't live long. Its lifetime is just around 30 days, but during this time, they lay from 500 to 800 eggs each on average. But it's not 1,000 at once, it's several goes throughout their life, with 75 to 100 eggs at once. The eggs hatch within 24 hours, and it takes a week in total for an egg to turn into a grown fly, and then the cycle continues. In colder climates, this process can take twice as long. A timberfly is the biggest fly species, which lives in Central and South America. They can grow up to 3.15 inches. Also, flies have beds, or more like their favorite spot to stay and sleep. They have a comfy place, somewhere close to their source of food, and they come there to rest at night. If you ever had your house flooded with flies, here are a few tips for you to reduce their population. First, it's important to understand what they're attracted to. They're attracted to other flies, and even to the smell of flies living there. And flies have an amazing sense of smell. So, if you hosted even one fly, expect to get more guests. If you have any traces of flies, like fly specks, they'll find you too. Make sure to wash your walls and surfaces. Next, flies love garbage and rotting produce. They lay eggs in rotten food and meat, so make sure to keep your food in the fridge, cover it, and keep the trash in tightly sealed containers. And of course, take out the trash regularly. Flies have a sweet tooth, or more like a sweet foot, since they taste with their feet. And they love syrup and other sugary liquids. They're also fond of soda and vinegar, so make sure to keep those stored and always wipe after yourself if you spill something. Lastly, they like to hide and live in dirty and leaky drains. They eat the bacteria from there, so always clear your drains and repair any leaks right away. Also, it'll help to seal all the cracks in your floor, ceiling, and walls if you have any. That's one of their ways to get into the house. You're about to go into an interview for your dream job. As you wait in the lobby, you realize you were so nervous in the morning that you forgot to eat breakfast. Now you're so hungry, you could eat a horse. Luckily, you were smart enough to pack some food in case you started starving. You open the bag of cheese puffs you brought, but then you realize, how are you going to eat these without getting cheesy orange dust all over your fingers and your nice outfit? Clever people on the internet have engineered the perfect genius solution. If you're not afraid of being a little unconventional, you can save your fingers from getting dust-coated by using a pair of chopsticks. They're long enough to reach down into the bag, so you can keep your hand safely outside of the cheesy, dusty abyss. But when you were opening the bag, a tear appeared on its side. The more you move it, the more the tear grows. You have to be careful because any further and your nice clothes will be covered in chip dust. Thankfully, the solution is just within reach. You spot a hole punch on the lobby desk. Using it, you can punch a hole in the bottom of the tear and stop it in its tracks. The round hole distributes force evenly, making a roadblock that helps prevent the bag from further ripping. Those tips are great, but they won't help you with the other chips you brought, which come in a tube. Luckily for that kind of packaging, all you need is a piece of printer paper. Curl it up and slip it into the tube around the chips. Now you can slide the entire stack out easily, opening the paper once it's out for a mess-free tray. As you're happily crunching away, you look around, suddenly aware that you're being very loud. You need to make a good first impression here after all. Good thing science has some answers on how to be quieter when eating one of the crunchiest snacks of all. Press each chip against the roof of your mouth using your tongue. The softness of your tongue will help to suppress the crunching noise. Curved-shaped chips are especially engineered to make the loudest crunch sound. So the best way to muffle the noise is to get rid of the shape first, then eat the chip as usual. But be warned, science has also claimed that eating your favorite crunchy snacks without hearing the iconic sound may mean you won't enjoy them as much. A professor of experimental psychology at Oxford University conducted a curious experiment. It showed that people's perception of flavor and taste are influenced not only by how food looks, but also by how it sounds. He had 20 participants eat chips while wearing headphones. He immersed their ears in crunching sounds at different volume levels and frequencies. Even though the chips they were munching on were all identical, the participants who were listening to louder, high-pitched crunches actually thought their chips were fresher and crispier. After all those salty snacks, you could go for a creamy treat. Through the window, you see there's an ice cream truck parked right outside. Perfect! You sneak a look at the clock. There's still plenty of time until your interview. Ice cream, here you come. You scan the menu on the truck. Obviously, a soft serve cone is way too risky. You can see it already. The slow drip melting down your hand right onto your nice clothes. Okay, no cone. So how about an ice cream sandwich? It's designed to keep you protected from sticky spills. And you're right, it is a good option. But there's a genius trick to make it even more foolproof. As you hold the sandwich, the soft cookie outside will warm up under your body heat, becoming tacky and sticky to your skin. We all know the chocolatey cookie goo that's left on our fingers, no matter how carefully we try to hold the sandwich as we eat. Adding a graham cracker on either side of the cookies will help you stay clean and pristine. Plus, it turns a regular ice cream sandwich into an upgraded cold s'more. It's an ice cream sandwich. As you're heading back inside, you spot another food truck, this one selling burritos. Well, you have lots of time and you're still pretty hungry. You order all your favorite fillings. When they hand you your order, you notice the burrito is wrapped in a second tortilla. This is a common, genius thing for restaurants to do, and while a lot of people don't know why, it can actually help you stay clean. While eating, unwrap the second tortilla and lay it open on a plate. Lean over it with each bite. Since burritos are notoriously good at dropping more of their filling than they keep in, this trick was devised to make the most of it. Anything that drops out will land on the second tortilla, which you can then wrap up into a second burrito when you're done with the first. This is the same reason packaged tortillas are often sold in even numbers. A delicious smell wafts from down the street. A stand selling corn on the cob. That pairs perfectly with a burrito. But there's no food that gets stuck in your teeth like corn. You didn't bring any floss, and it would be so embarrassing to go into the interview with a yellow kernel in your teeth. Luckily, you can have your corn and eat it too. Just use a chopstick. Skewer the corn kernels with it, going horizontally along a row. Then use one hand braced against the cob and pull the other end away. You will have a stack of juicy corn that you can eat right off the stick, avoiding any fibers between your teeth. Genius! Back inside, you check the time. There's still plenty of it. And you've managed to stay completely clean and perfectly presentable for your interview. A fruit bowl sits on the receptionist's desk, with a sign that says complimentary. You grab a wonderfully ripe kiwi. But this is an office building, so there are no spoons lying anywhere. Plus, cutting the fruit open and scooping the middle out can get really juicy. That's no worry though, because that's not the only way of eating a kiwi. Some kiwi enthusiasts suggest that the best way is to actually eat the fruit whole, just biting into it like an apple. The kiwi fruit skin is completely edible and is packed with additional nutrients. A recent study shows that eating the skin can triple the fiber intake compared to just eating the flesh. Plus, this way, you're not losing out on the vitamin C boost that it can give. The skin contains high concentrations of nutrients, especially fiber, folate, and vitamin E. Supposedly, eating the skin of a kiwi can increase its fiber content by up to 50%. If you can't handle the fuzzy texture, try rubbing the fruit against a pair of jeans. The friction created by the denim will easily remove the fuzz, making the fruit much more palatable. Try it out. Not only will you be less likely to be sprayed with sticky juice, but you might also get more nutritious bang for your buck. Oh, wow. You just remembered that you packed a sandwich for lunch in the morning. Might as well have it now. But all that mustard and barbecue sauce, there has to be a way to hold sandwiches to make sure they make the least mess, right? Good news, there is. Sandwiches are best eaten with a claw hand shape. Hold the burger so that your thumbs and pinkies are on the bottom, leaving your other 3 fingers over the top of the bun. This positioning works like a clamp, holding all the ingredients in place. This way, you can take bites without worrying about half of the sandwich ending up on your lap. Well, after all that food, you're thirsty. The coffee maker in the corner is calling your name, but bringing it back to your seat without a spill is a test of agility that only a person with perfect balance can manage. Actually, you just need to understand a bit of physics. Have you ever wondered why it's so hard to walk with a cup of coffee without spilling it? It's because the length of a person's stride has almost exactly the right frequency to create rolling waves in a typical sized coffee mug. Each step rocks the liquid more, and it gets closer and closer to the mug's lip. Spills are most common between your 7th and 10th steps. We often try to walk quickly with our cups so that we can get to our destination before it spills over. but it turns out that the faster you walk, the closer your gait comes to the natural sloshing frequency of coffee. To avoid creating the waves that lead to spillage, walk slowly. Finally, it's time for your interview. Good thing you've kept completely clean while eating. You head towards the meeting room. On a table right outside, there are free powdered jelly donuts for everyone. How nice! A donut would be the best after that cup of coffee. Uh-oh, you're so distracted you don't notice your untied shoelace and go flying into the table. Donuts fly up and land right into your lap. So much for a good first impression. See you Saturday! You hang up and realize you have 2 days before the main family get-together of the year. Your shopping list is ready, so you head to the largest supermarket in town. You follow the list to the letter, grabbing everything you need as fast as possible. The cart is full of fruit, vegetables, dairy, meat, fish, bread. Well done you! 1 hour later, you get back home and proudly hand in the shopping bags to your grandma. She takes out the items one by one and frowns more and more at each of them. Turns out the fish and meat you picked aren't fresh at all, and those bananas and greens won't make it till Saturday either. Grandma says she'll save the day. You make a good snack to not go shopping hungry. Now you won't buy the stuff you don't need. Then you get in the car together to do it all over again. Smart shopping means cruising the perimeter of the store where you can find all the fresh and healthy stuff. Fruits, vegetables, dairy, meat, and fish. They normally reserve the center aisles for junk food. So, you decide to skip them altogether. Your first stop is the produce section. Grandma says you should spend the most time here. And it's a good thing you arrived before lunch. Most grocers get fresh produce when they just open, or later in the evening before they close. You reach out for packaged tomatoes, but Gran stops you. Prepackaged fruit and vegetables are usually more expensive. Plus, they don't let you check each item. A good ripe tomato can weigh double as much as an unripe one. It should have smooth and firm skin and smell like a tomato. No! Don't put that poor bruised thing into your cart. Bruises on produce are a perfect breeding ground for bacteria. Try to find firm cucumbers that have no blemishes or soft spots. The best ones are dark green. If you see yellow spots, it means the thing is overly ripe and will likely taste odd. The same goes for peppers. They must be of intense color with no stains. Now turn it upside down and count the bumps. 4 bumps means fewer seeds and better taste. 2 to 3 bumps mean bitter taste. The stem of a fresh pepper is always green, firm, and crispy. Take these potatoes with sprouts out of your cart right now. Go for the firm and smooth ones, without the wrinkled skin, soft dark spots, or cuts. Pick only green lettuce with no holes or brown edges. The brighter its shade of green, the better. Moving on to fruits and berries. Gran explains that a ripe watermelon will come with a dry brown stem. This one with a dark yellow must have been resting on the ground long enough to get sweet. The same's true for melons. The ones with a yellowish bark is sweeter, as it had received enough sunlight by the time they picked it. Check out the stem of the bunch before taking those bananas home. The stem must be green to light yellow and not turning brown. Only take single bananas if you want to eat them right away. They survive longer in clusters. Never judge a mango by its color. Instead, gently squeeze it. A ripe mango will give in a bit, and it will also have a fruity aroma at the stem end. Smaller fruit is normally sweeter, but that rule doesn't work for strawberries. Different sorts come in different sizes, so bigger ones can be yummy too. Their ripening ends once they've been picked up, so go for bright red berries with fresh green leaves. Those would look dry and wilt if they had picked the berries a long time ago. That lemon won't give you much juice. It's pale, which means it's an older one. This firm, unblemished one with smooth skin will be way better. It also feels heavier, and that's a good sign as well. You're shopping for a big event, but otherwise, you'd never buy too much produce at a time. If it's fresh and organic, it won't naturally last too long, and always opt for fruits and veggies that are in season. They'll be less expensive and of better quality. Next stop, honey. This one looks odd to you as it has those crystals at the bottom of the jar, but Grandma explains it's a sign of freshness. It's normal for honey to crystallize when the temperature drops. It's also a good sign it looks opaque. It means it's more natural and healthy and not pasteurized. You check the list and realize you still need some bread. You already know the best option is the whole grain kind. You pick it up and study the label. Made with whole grains won't do. This one that says whole wheat flour is good. The fewer ingredients, the better. If you can't pronounce the name of the additive, you don't want it in your bread. It shouldn't have artificial flavors, colors, or preservatives. You lightly press on the bread you just chose. Bingo! It goes back to its original shape, which means it's high quality. If you see your finger mark on it, it could have been previously frozen, or the baking process went wrong. You move towards the canned food section, and Gran jumps in your way. She's sure canned foods are bad for your health, as they contain a huge amount of sodium. You convince her to at least study the labels. You should always pick canned foods that don't have too much salt or sugar in them. The ones preserved in water or their own juice are the healthiest, as they have fewer artificial ingredients in them. You find some tuna packed in olive oil. The package is perfectly closed, so it's all good. You know you should never take a rusty can. It can be dangerous. Okay, looks like you've got everything you need, except for meat and dairy. You know you should always grab those last. They can spoil without a fridge if shopping gets too long. You make some room in your shopping cart to protect your fruit from raw meat juice, just in case. Red meat should be of dark color. Purple, red, and brown are all good. Pork should be the shade of light blushing pink. It should smell good. It can't be pungent in any way. If you see many fibers, it must be some tough meat with a strong flavor. Beef tenderloin won't have any grains because it's super tender. White flecks and streaks of fat throughout the muscle are another sign it's juicy and tender. If you aren't planning to cook meat straight away, pick the one with the latest best before date. You can still eat it safely after that date, but it tastes better before it. Dirty marks within the packaging are a red flag. Someone must have handled it with dirty hands. If the chicken you're about to buy has skin, it should be paler than the flesh, not yellow or light brown. The edges mustn't look dry. The cuts must be smooth and uniformly sized. If it's not butchered well, there might be small joints and bones in your lunch. Any chicken that has been in the container for more than 2 days should better stay on the shelf and not in your cart. Gran picks up a fish and stares it in the eye. She explains a good fish will have protruding ones with shiny black pupils. The skin of fresh fish should be silky, not sticky or dull. Squeeze the fillet. If there's a trace of your finger mark on it, it's no good. The final stop of the day: dairy products. You should reach for the back of the shelf to find the ones with the most distant expiration date. The same rule works for frozen foods, packaged foods, and eggs. Stockers locate the newer ones behind the older items. Grandma recommends choosing pasteurized milk. No raw products will land in your cart today. When milk goes through pasteurization, they heat it up to fight off disease-causing bacteria. It doesn't take away the nutritional value of the product, so no worries about that. When picking the best yogurt, pay attention to the label. The more words you see on it, the better. 3 basic ingredients are enough to make it work. The rest should be preservatives and sugar you don't need. Live and active cultures is something you want to see on the ingredients list. Don't forget to get some cheese. Not this one though. The soft kinds like ricotta, cream cheese, goat cheese, or shredded cheese shouldn't have any mold on them. It can penetrate inside easily. Some mold is fine on hard cheeses. You can carefully cut the area around it and still eat it. Yay! You're done with shopping. Time to go home and cook.
How about eating a banana with mayo? Dipping pickles in peanut butter? These food combinations do sound pretty wild, but how do they taste? Well, give them a try, and Oreos with mustard might become your favorite dish. Okay, stay with me here. Tomatoes and peanut butter. Put several slices of tomato on a piece of bread and spread some peanut butter over the sandwich. Or just slather a thick layer of peanut butter over a slice of tomato. This taste combination is surprisingly popular with many foodies. Nutella and French fries. Salt tends to enhance flavors. That's why if you dip your French fries in Nutella, the famous hazelnut spread will taste sweeter and nuttier. Yes, the pun was intended. Another way to enjoy your French fries even more is to wash them down with chocolate milk. Banana and bacon. Salty, crispy bacon combined with sweet, carb-heavy banana makes a perfect mix. Put these ingredients on a slice of bread, add some peanut butter, voila! Your perfect sandwich is ready. pickles and ice cream. Well, I admit this combination might not be just for everyone, but there are foodies who find this unusual mix of salty and sweet, vinegary and milky, strangely alluring. Cheddar cheese and apple pie. These days you can surprise no one by serving sliced cheese together with fresh apples. But since these products get along quite well, why don't you take it one step further? They say the idea of adding cheddar cheese to apple pies first appeared in England, and after that, it spread all over the world. French fries and honey. If you want to turn your French fries experience into something different and more exciting, honey will do the trick. Its sweet flavor will complement the fast food saltiness. No wonder some restaurants have honey among other dipping options. Banana and mayo. Nope. By no means do I encourage you to squeeze a healthy dollop of mayonnaise on a peeled banana and stuff it into your mouth. Instead, try sandwiching a sliced banana between two pieces of bread and coat it with a bit of mayo. You might be in for a pleasant surprise. Chocolate and chips. This salty-sweet combination tastes amazing. No wonder chocolate-covered chips are a thing, and many brands have already added this mix to their product lines. Burger and jam. These days you can order this combo in most restaurants, and no one will think you're a weirdo. Well, mostly no one. More and more people choose this option over the regular one with ketchup. Popcorn and milk. Some unique individuals replace breakfast cereal with popcorn. They add milk and claim that this dish tastes no worse than its more widespread and popular alternative. Care to try? White chocolate and red caviar. They say this unlikely food combo was created by a famous chef. He was amazed at how the salty caviar softened the sweetness of the white chocolate. If you're a fan of sweet salty tastes, you're going to love it. Peanut butter and pickles. Let's say you aren't too enthusiastic about dipping pickles into sturdy peanut butter. Then try combining these ingredients in a sandwich. In this case, the vinegary flavor of the pickles will dilute the stickiness of the peanut butter. Watermelon and salt. Those who have never tried this taste combination often think that salt rids watermelon of its sweetness. But the truth is quite the opposite. A pinch of salt will only enhance the flavor. Mango and chili pepper. If you're a spicy food lover, this combination might catch your fancy. You can sprinkle some hot chili pepper on a sliced mango and enjoy the burn. Peanut butter and bacon. Remember that banana and bacon combo? It's time to replace the banana with some peanut butter. Its smoothness will contrast with the crispiness of the bacon. Careful, you might get addicted fast. Ice cream and hot sauce. The most effective way to put out the fire caused by spicy food in your mouth is to drink some milk. Then why not step it up a notch? Drizzle some spicy sauce over your vanilla ice cream to please your adventurous soul. Chocolate and avocado. It's not only about adding a bit of chocolate to your avocado toast. You can also make a mouth-watering avocado and chocolate milkshake. Then the buttery texture of avocado will perfectly complement the flavor of chocolate. Burger and peanut butter. Ooh. Burgers with jam are more of a sweetmeat salty combination. But burgers with peanut butter are a salt with more salt kind of situation. But instead of spreading melted peanut butter all over your burger, you have to add it while making beef patties, and your burgers are bound to become juicier. Oreos and mustard. Those who have tried this food combo promise that the flavors go with each other amazingly well. Scratch away an Oreo cookie frosting and replace it with German mustard. You won't regret it. Peanut butter and mayo. While it's one of the most bizarre combinations you can imagine in a sandwich, it has a long history. People started to mix peanut butter, rich in proteins, and mayo, full of fats, during tough times. But later, the sandwich stuck around once people realized it was actually delicious. Pizza and honey. Hot honey can make an unexpected but undeniably awesome pizza topping. For example, it's a great way to balance the excessive amount of salt coming with, let's say, pepperoni. So, if you cook pizza at home, put some pepperoni and peppers on top of it. Then coat it with honey. You can thank me later. Olive oil and ice cream. To get a mega delicious salty sweet combo, sprinkle some olive oil and a bit of sea salt on the top of your vanilla ice cream. Really, go for it. Peanut butter and sriracha. Yet another unexpected combination of two seemingly incompatible ingredients. But in fact, the sweet aftertaste of sriracha will make the sticky peanut butter taste more interesting. And the butter, in turn, will take the edge off the sriracha's spiciness. Green apples and salsa. You might have tried mangoes or pineapples mixed with salsa sauce. But then, why should it be any different with green apples? Their slightly sour taste is perfect for spicy dishes. It does offset some heat, but at the same time, their flavor adds a strong and a bit bitter taste to the mix. Strawberries and balsamic. This is a tried-and-true Italian combination that works amazingly well. The savoriness of the vinegar makes strawberries taste sweeter. It also complements their juicy nature. Watermelon and feta. No classic Greek salad can go without feta, but this cheese can taste no worse when you combine it with fruit, watermelon in particular. The dense structure and saltiness of feta will add extra flavor to the juicy red goodness. Peanut butter, jelly, and goldfish crackers sandwich. Now, peanut butter and jam have long been a classic, but why goldfish crackers? True foodies know that this component fills in all the remaining gaps. Your sandwich gets a satisfying crunch. It becomes more savory, and the crackers are just salty enough to balance the sweetness of the jelly. Basil and strawberry. I've already mentioned the benefits of mixing strawberries with balsamic vinegar, but strawberries and basil are just as good. You can test this combination while making lemonades and other drinks. Basil and strawberry frozen yogurt taste just as delicious. Pickle brine and chicken. Cooking chicken in pickle brine helps keep the meat juicy. At the same time, this method preserves the natural flavor of poultry meat. Another benefit? You don't need to use salt in the process. The brine is already salty enough. Hummus and dried cranberries. After dipping your cracker in hummus, top it with several dried cranberries. They make a world of difference by adding a tiny bit of tang. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends.